Queen Zarathel stood motionless in the grand hall of her crystalline palace, her 6 arms trembling as she stared at the human who had just entered. The newest member of her personal guard looked up at her with familiar green eyes that she had seen countless times in her dreams. Those same eyes that once gazed at her with love across the battlefield of Kepler 442b. Before the explosion that tore her world apart, the human male stood at attention, his dark hair catching the ethereal light that filtered through the palace's bioluminescent walls. His name was Marcus Chen. According to the datapad her chief advisor clutched nervously. A decorated soldier from Earth's Colonial Defense Force, recommended for his exceptional combat record and unwavering loyalty. But none of that mattered to Zarathel in this moment. All that mattered was that he looked exactly like Kai Ren. Her lost mate had been human too, one of the first to join the Interspecies Alliance 20 years ago. Back then the galaxy was a different place. The Zephyrian Empire was smaller, more vulnerable, and Zarathel was merely a princess learning the art of war. Chiron had been assigned as a cultural liaison, helping bridge the gap between human and Zephyrian military tactics. She remembered their first meeting vividly. He had walked into the war room with that same confident stride, those same broad shoulders, and when he smiled, the same dimple appeared on his left cheek. The other Zephyrian commanders had been skeptical of working with humans, but Kai Ren quickly proved his worth. His strategic mind was sharp, his courage unquestionable, and his respect for Zephyrian customs had won over even the most stubborn generals. Marcus cleared his throat softly, clearly uncomfortable with the prolonged silence. "Your Majesty, I am honored to serve in your personal guard. I pledge my life to your protection." The voice was different. Kai Ren had spoken with a slight accent from the outer colonies, while Marcus spoke with the crisp pronunciation of Earth's military academies. But the tone, the cadence, the way he held himself, it was all heartbreakingly familiar. Zarathel's chief advisor, General Tissera, stepped forward. "Your Majesty, if you wish to interview the new guard member privately, I can arrange—" "No!" Zarathel's voice came out sharper than intended. She composed herself, her royal training taking over. "Welcome to the Palace Guard, Marcus Chen. General Tissera will brief you on your duties." She turned away before her emotions could betray her further, her flowing ceremonial robes creating a barrier between herself and the impossible sight before her. As she walked toward her private chambers, she could feel Marcus's eyes following her, just as Chiron used to watch her leave the war room all those years ago. The memories came flooding back as she reached the safety of her quarters. Chiron had been more than just a liaison. He had become her closest confidant, her strategic partner, and eventually, her secret lover. Their relationship had been forbidden by Zephyrian law at the time. Royalty was expected to mate within their own species, to preserve the purity of their bloodline and maintain political alliances. But love had found a way, as it always does. They would meet in the palace gardens under the light of the 3 moons, sharing stories of their different worlds. Chiron would tell her about Earth's blue oceans and golden sunsets, while she described the floating cities of Zephyr Prime and the singing crystals that grew in their deepest caves. He taught her human chess, and she showed him the ancient Zephyrian meditation techniques that sharpened the mind for battle. Their secret was discovered the night before the Battle of Kepler 442b. A jealous courtier had followed them to their hidden meeting place and reported their relationship to the High Council. Zarathel was given an ultimatum: renounce her human lover and marry the Zephyrian noble they had chosen for her, or be stripped of her title and banished from the royal family. She had chosen love. But before they could flee together, the enemy had attacked. The hegemony forces had launched a surprise assault on their forward base, and Chiron had insisted on staying to help with the evacuation. He was always putting others before himself, always the hero even when it cost him everything. The explosion that destroyed the base took him along with 300 other souls. Zarathel had watched from her escape ship as the entire facility was consumed by the enemy's plasma bombs. She never even found his body. That loss had changed her forever. She threw herself into the war with a fury that surprised even her enemies. Within 5 years, she had united the scattered Zephyrian colonies under her rule and pushed the hegemony back beyond the galactic rim. She became known throughout the galaxy as the Iron Queen, beloved by her people but distant from everyone around her. She never took another mate. How could she, when half of her heart had been buried in the rubble of Kepler 442b? Now, 20 years later, the universe seemed to be playing a cruel joke on her. Marcus Chen stood guard outside her door, probably wondering why his new queen had reacted so strangely to his appointment. He had no idea that his face was a ghost from her past, a reminder of everything she had lost and could never reclaim. Zarathel moved to her window and gazed out at the sprawling capital city below. Millions of beings from dozens of species lived and worked together under her protection. The Zephyrian Empire had become a beacon of peace and prosperity in the galaxy. Everything she and Chiron had dreamed of building together. But as she watched the city lights twinkle like stars, all she could think about was the human standing guard just beyond her door, wearing the face of her lost love. Marcus Chen had been in difficult situations before, but standing guard outside the Queen's chambers while she clearly struggled with some internal turmoil was a new kind of challenge. He could hear her moving around inside, her footsteps echoing against the crystalline floors in patterns that suggested deep thought or distress. Something about his presence had shaken her. The way her exotic features had gone completely still when she first saw him, the slight tremor in her voice when she spoke. These were not the reactions of a composed ruler meeting a new guard. Marcus had studied Zephyrian customs extensively before accepting this assignment, and nothing in his research had prepared him for such a personal response. The next morning brought his first real test. Queen Zarathel emerged from her chambers wearing the flowing blue robes of state, her expression carefully neutral. But Marcus caught the way her eyes lingered on his face for just a moment too long before she looked away. "You will accompany me to the council chamber," she announced. "The Alliance representatives are arriving today for the trade negotiations." Marcus fell into step beside her as they walked through the palace corridors. The walls here were alive with bioluminescent patterns that shifted and changed based on the emotional state of the royal family. Right now, they pulsed with an uncertain golden light that Marcus found oddly mesmerizing. "Have you worked with alien dignitaries before, Marcus Chen?" the Queen asked as they walked. "Yes, Your Majesty. I served as security detail for several diplomatic missions during my time with the Colonial Defense Force. I've worked with Andromedans, Centaurians, and even a few crystalline collective representatives. And what did you think of them?" Marcus considered his answer carefully. "I learned that despite our physical differences, most sentient species share similar hopes and fears. The desire for security, prosperity, and peace seems to be universal." Zarathel stopped walking. When she turned to face him, her expression was unreadable. "That is a very wise observation. Not many humans understand that truth. My father taught me that understanding others begins with seeing them as equals, not aliens." Something flickered across the Queen's features. Surprise, perhaps, or recognition. "Your father sounds like a remarkable man." He was. He died in the Hegemony War, defending a Zephyrian colony on the Outer Rim. The Queen's 6 arms went completely still. "Which colony?" "Kepler 442b, Your Majesty." He was part of the evacuation team when the base was attacked. The silence that followed was so complete that Marcus could hear his own heartbeat. The Queen stared at him with an intensity that made him wonder if he had said something wrong. The bioluminescent walls around them shifted to a deep purple that he had learned indicated strong emotion. "What was your father's name?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "Kai Chen, Your Majesty, though he went by Chiron during his military service. He took a Zephyrian naming convention to honor his assignment." The Queen's legs buckled slightly, and Marcus instinctively reached out to steady her. The moment his human hands touched her arm, she pulled away as if burned. "Your Majesty, are you all right?" She composed herself with visible effort. "Yes, forgive me. The mention of Kepler 442b brings back difficult memories." Marcus nodded respectfully. "I understand, Your Majesty. My father spoke often of the bravery he witnessed there, especially from the Zephyrian commanders who stayed behind to ensure everyone escaped." "He spoke of that battle to you?" "Often. He said it was where he learned the true meaning of honor. He particularly admired one young Zephyrian princess who refused to leave until every last civilian was evacuated. He said she fought like a goddess of war but had the heart of a protector." Zarathel turned away from him, her shoulders shaking almost imperceptibly. "That princess? What else did he tell you about her?" Marcus searched his memory. "He said she was brilliant, fearless, and beautiful, that she understood strategy better than most generals twice her age." He always regretted that the war separated them before he could tell her how much he respected her leadership. The words hung in the air between them like a bridge spanning impossible distance. Marcus began to understand that his father's stories might have been more personal than he had realized. "Your Majesty," he said carefully, "did you know my father?" She was quiet for so long that Marcus wondered if she would answer. When she finally spoke, her voice carried the weight of decades. "Chiron was my closest advisor during the Kepler campaign. He was also my friend." Marcus felt a surge of pride and sadness. He would be honored to know that his son serves your guard now. "Yes," she whispered, still not turning to face him. "He would be." They reached the council chamber in silence, but Marcus could feel the shift in the air between them. Whatever connection his father had shared with this remarkable queen, it was clearly deeper than military cooperation. The way she spoke his father's name, the emotion she fought to control, these were not the reactions of a superior remembering a subordinate. As they entered the chamber where alien dignitaries waited, Marcus caught sight of a portrait on the wall. It showed a younger Queen Zarathel standing beside a human male in military dress. The human's face was turned slightly away from the viewer, but Marcus could see enough to recognize the strong jawline and dark hair. His father had been more than an advisor to this queen. He had been something far more precious, and Marcus was beginning to understand why his arrival at the palace had shaken her so profoundly. The revelation changed everything. As he took his position behind the queen's chair, Marcus found himself seeing her not just as a ruler to protect, but as someone who had loved and lost his father. The weight of that knowledge settled on his shoulders like armor, forged from memory and responsibility. Whatever his father had meant to Queen Zarathel, Marcus would honor that connection by serving her with the same loyalty and dedication that had made Chiron legendary among both human and Zephyrian forces. But as the negotiations began and he watched the queen command the room, with grace and authority, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that his arrival in her life was more than coincidence. The universe had a way of bringing the right people together at the right time, and he suspected his story with the queen was just beginning. The assassination attempt came 3 days later, during the evening celebration honoring the successful trade negotiations. Marcus had been watching the crowd carefully, noting the mix of species and the subtle tensions that always existed when so many different cultures gathered in one place. The hegemony operative struck without warning, emerging from a group of Centaurian diplomats with a plasma blade aimed directly at Queen Zarathel's heart. Time seemed to slow as Marcus processed the threat, his training taking over even as his mind reeled at the possibility of losing someone else he was sworn to protect. He moved faster than he had ever moved before, throwing himself between the assassin and the queen. The plasma blade meant for her heart instead caught him across the ribs, burning through his ceremonial armor and into flesh. The pain was immediate and overwhelming, but Marcus managed to tackle the assassin before collapsing to the crystalline floor. Chaos erupted in the great hall. Guards swarmed the area while guests screamed and fled in panic. Through the haze of pain and adrenaline, Marcus heard Queen Zarathel's voice calling for medical assistance, her tone sharp with command and something else, fear. He tried to sit up, to assure her that he was fine, but the plasma burn had done more damage than he initially realized. His vision blurred as concerned faces gathered around him, but all he could focus on were the queen's distinctive purple eyes looking down at him with an expression of profound terror. "Stay with me, Marcus," she commanded, her 6 hands working to apply pressure to his wound.
"That is an order." "Yes, Your Majesty," he managed to whisper before consciousness left him. When Marcus awoke,
he was in the palace medical wing, surrounded by the soft humming of Zephyrian healing technology. The advanced bioregenerators had done their work. The plasma burn was healing cleanly, leaving only a faint line across his ribs where the blade had struck. Queen Zarathel sat in a chair beside his bed, still wearing her torn celebration robes. She looked like she hadn't slept in days, her normally perfect appearance disheveled with worry. "Your Majesty?" Marcus started to sit up, but she placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Rest, the medical team says you need at least another day of regeneration therapy." The assassin? Dead. Hegemony operative, as we suspected. This was not their first attempt, and it will not be their last. Her voice carried a bitter edge. "They have been trying to kill me for 20 years. Marcus studied her face, noting the exhaustion and something else. Guilt. This wasn't your fault, Your Majesty, was it not? She stood and moved to the window, her reflection ghost-like in the bioluminescent glass. You nearly died protecting me. Just like my father. She turned back to him, surprise evident in her features. What do you know about how your father died? I know he stayed behind to help with the evacuation at Kepler 442b. I know he could have escaped but chose to save others instead. Marcus met her gaze steadily. I also know there was more to his relationship with a certain Zephyrian princess than he ever told me directly. Zarathel's composure finally cracked. She sank back into the chair, her head in her hands. He died saving my life, Marcus. The explosion that destroyed the base. Chiron threw himself between me and the blast. He could have reached the evacuation ship, but he chose to shield me instead. The pieces of the puzzle fell into place in Marcus's mind. You loved him, more than life itself. The admission seemed to pain her. We were going to leave together, to find some quiet world where a human and a Zephyrian could build a life without political complications. But duty called, and he answered as he always did. Marcus absorbed this revelation, understanding now why his arrival had affected her so strongly. I look like him, terrifyingly so. When you walked into my throne room, I thought I was seeing a ghost, or perhaps that the universe was offering me a second chance I didn't deserve. Why didn't you deserve it? She looked at him with eyes full of old pain. Because I failed to save him. Because I let duty and protocol and fear keep us apart until it was too late. Because I have spent 20 years building an empire while the best part of me died in that explosion. Marcus pushed himself up in the bed, ignoring the protest from his healing ribs. Your Majesty, with respect, that's not what my father would want you to believe. How can you possibly know what he would want? Because I knew him. He told me stories about the war, about the battles he fought and the friends he made. But when he talked about you, and yes, I realize now he was talking about you, his whole face would light up. He said you were the strongest person he ever met, that you carried the hopes of entire worlds on your shoulders and never let them down. Zarathel's eyes glistened with unshed tears. He said that? He said you were born to be a queen, that you would build something beautiful and lasting. He was proud of you, Your Majesty, even knowing what it cost him. She was quiet for a long moment, processing his words. Finally, she spoke in a voice barely above a whisper. When I saw you lying on that floor, bleeding because of me, I felt like I was losing him all over again. But you're not, Marcus said firmly. I'm not my father, Your Majesty. I'm my own person with my own choices to make. And I choose to serve you, not because of his memory, but because I believe in what you've built here. She studied his face, searching for something. The hegemony will try again. Following me means living with constant danger. I've been in danger before. Besides, someone has to keep you safe long enough to enjoy that peace and prosperity you've created. For the first time since he had met her, Queen Zarathel smiled. Really smiled, not the careful diplomatic expression she wore in public. It transformed her entire face, making her look younger and more beautiful than Marcus had imagined possible. Your father would be proud of you too, she said softly. I hope so. But right now, I'm more concerned with making sure his sacrifice meant something. The empire he helped you build is worth protecting, Your Majesty. And so are you. As if summoned by their conversation, General Tisra appeared in the doorway. Your Majesty, forgive the interruption, but we have intelligence about another hegemony cell operating in the outer systems. Queen Zarathel stood, instantly transforming back into the composed ruler her subjects knew. But before she left, she turned back to Marcus. When you are healed, I want you by my side during all security briefings. Your father had excellent strategic insights, and I suspect you may have inherited more than just his appearance. After she left, Marcus lay back against his pillows, contemplating the strange turns his life had taken. He had come to this palace as a simple guard, but it seemed the universe had other plans for him. Whatever those plans were, he would face them with the same courage and dedication that had made his father a legend. Outside his window, the city lights of Zephyr Prime sparkled like a constellation of hope. Somewhere in those lights, the future was taking shape, and Marcus Chen intended to be part of it. 2 weeks after the assassination attempt, Marcus found himself in the palace war room, surrounded by holographic displays showing troop movements and intelligence reports from across the galaxy. Queen Zarathel had been true to her word about including him in strategic discussions, and he was beginning to understand why his father had been so valuable to her military campaigns. The hegemony had been testing their defenses along 3 different fronts, probing for weaknesses in the outer colonies. What concerned Marcus most was the pattern emerging from these attacks. They weren't random raids for resources, but coordinated strikes designed to gather intelligence about Zephyrian defensive capabilities. "They're planning something big," he said, studying the tactical displays. "These aren't resource raids or territory grabs. They're studying us." General Thisra, a veteran Zephyrian commander with scars from a dozen battles, nodded approvingly. "The human sees what we have been suspecting. The question is, what are they preparing for?" Queen Zarathel stood at the center of the room, her 6 arms gracefully manipulating the holographic controls to zoom in on specific sectors. "Show me the attack patterns again, but overlay them with our major trade routes and communication hubs." Marcus watched as the data aligned, revealing a chilling picture. "Your Majesty, they're not just studying our defenses, they're mapping our entire infrastructure. If they wanted to cripple the Empire without a prolonged war, they would strike here. Here and here," the Queen finished, highlighting 3 critical junction points that connected dozens of star systems. Simultaneous attacks on these locations would isolate our outer colonies and cut off supply lines to the inner worlds. The implications were staggering. The hegemony had learned from their previous defeats and was planning a surgical strike that could bring down the Zephyrian Empire without the massive fleet engagements that had cost them so dearly in the past. "How long do we have?" asked Admiral Vextar, the Queen's naval commander. Marcus studied the intelligence reports, cross-referencing the timing of the probing attacks with known hegemony ship construction schedules. "Based on these patterns and the resources they've been gathering, I'd estimate 6 to 8 weeks before they're ready to launch. Can we reinforce those junction points in time?" the Queen asked. General Tysera manipulated the displays to show current fleet positions. "Not without leaving other systems vulnerable. We would be playing into their hands, abandoning our strategic depth to protect specific targets." "Then we don't defend," Marcus said quietly. "We attack first." The room fell silent. Queen Zarathel turned to look at him, her expression unreadable. "Explain." Marcus stepped closer to the displays, his mind racing through possibilities. "They're expecting us to react defensively, to fortify our positions and wait for their assault. But what if we don't give them the chance to execute their plan?" "Preemptive strike," Admiral Vextar mused. "Risky, but it worked during the Hegemony War." "More than risky," General Thisera objected. "If we commit our forces to an offensive and fail, those junction points will be completely undefended." Marcus nodded, understanding the concern. "That's why we don't commit everything. We use their own strategy against them. Surgical strikes, not massive fleet engagements. Hit their staging areas, disrupt their timetable, force them to react to us instead of executing their plan." Queen Zarathel studied the tactical displays with the same intensity her father had once brought to chess problems. "The hegemony staging areas are heavily fortified. Even surgical strikes would require significant resources." "Not if we're smart about it," Marcus said, warming to the idea. My father's reports from the original war mentioned that hegemony forces rely heavily on centralized command structures. Take out their communication hubs and their coordination falls apart." "I remember those reports," the Queen said softly. "Chiron always emphasized the importance of disrupting enemy communications before engaging their main forces." The room was quiet for a moment as everyone considered the proposal. Finally, Admiral Vextar spoke up. "It could work, but we would need precise intelligence about their staging areas and communication networks." "I can get that intelligence," a new voice said from the doorway. Everyone turned to see Commander Lysandra, the Queen's chief intelligence officer, entering the war room. "My operatives have been tracking hegemony movements for months. We know where they're gathering their forces." Queen Zarathel straightened, and Marcus could see the decision forming in her eyes. "How long would you need to plan such an operation?" 2 weeks for detailed reconnaissance and tactical planning," Admiral Vextar replied. "Another week to position our forces." "That gives us 3 weeks to spare if Marcus is right about their timeline," the Queen mused. "General Tysera, I want contingency plans for defending those junction points in case our offensive fails." Admiral Vextar, begin planning the surgical strikes. Commander Lysandra, get me everything you have on hegemony staging areas. As the commanders began to file out to execute their orders, Queen Zarathel approached Marcus. Walk with me. They left the war room together, making their way to the palace gardens where bioluminescent flowers created patterns of light in the artificial twilight. Marcus could see the weight of command on her shoulders, the responsibility for billions of lives that she carried. With such grace, you realize what you've just proposed could determine the fate of the entire empire, she said as they walked among the glowing blooms. Yes, Your Majesty. But doing nothing guarantees defeat. At least this way we're taking control of our own destiny. She paused beside a fountain where liquid light cascaded in impossible spirals. Your father proposed a similar strategy during the siege of Arcturus Prime. Bold, risky, but ultimately successful. Did you approve his plan? I did. Against the advice of my other commanders, I trusted his judgment. She looked at him with eyes that held 20 years of accumulated wisdom and pain. He was right, of course. The victory at Arcturus turned the tide of the entire war. Marcus felt the weight of that parallel. Your Majesty, I'm not trying to be my father. I'm just trying to serve your empire to the best of my ability. I know, and that's exactly what makes you so valuable. She turned to face him fully. But I need you to understand something, Marcus. If this plan fails, if we lose ships and lives because I trusted your judgment, can you live with that responsibility? He thought about his father, about the choices that had shaped both their lives. Can you live with not trying, knowing what the alternative is? She smiled at that, the expression soft and genuine in the garden's ethereal light. Spoken like a true Chen. Very well, Marcus. We'll do this your way. But I want you to understand that this makes you more than just my guard. You're now one of my senior strategic advisors. I won't let you down, Your Majesty. See that you don't. I've already lost one Chen to this war with the hegemony. I don't intend to lose another. As they walked back toward the palace, Marcus reflected on the strange paths that had brought him to this moment. He had come here as a simple guard, but fate seemed determined to make him something more. Whatever the coming battle brought, he would face it with honor, carrying forward the legacy his father had built while forging his own path in service to a queen who had already given everything for her people. The war was coming, but this time they would be ready. The first phase of Operation Shattered Crown launched exactly 3 weeks later. Marcus stood on the bridge of the ZES Vengeance, Queen Zarathel's flagship, watching as their strike forces moved into position across 3 different sectors simultaneously. The precision required for this operation was staggering. 12 separate task forces, each targeting specific hegemony communication hubs and staging areas, all coordinated to strike within a 6-hour window. Task Force Delta reports ready, Admiral Vextar announced from his command station. All units are in position. Marcus monitored the tactical displays, cross-referencing the real-time intelligence feeds with their planned attack vectors. Everything looked perfect on paper, but he knew that no plan survived contact with the enemy unchanged. Your Majesty, he said, approaching Queen Zarathel's command chair. I'm reading unusual energy signatures from the hegemony stations. They might have upgraded their defensive system since our last intelligence reports. She studied the data he indicated, her 6 arms moving gracefully across the holographic controls, enhanced shields and what appears to be point defense systems we haven't seen before. They've been busy. Should we abort? General Tysera asked from her position at the communications array. Marcus shook his head. The core strategy still holds. We just need to adjust our approach. Instead of simultaneous strikes, we hit them in sequence. Use the chaos from the first attack to mask our approach to the second target. That increases our exposure time, Admiral Vextar pointed out. More opportunities for them to coordinate a response. But it also gives us better intelligence for each subsequent attack, Marcus countered. We learn from what works against their new defenses and adapt in real time. Queen Zarathel considered this for a moment, then activated the fleet-wide communication system. All task force commanders, this is Crown Actual. We are modifying the attack sequence. Delta and Epsilon task forces will proceed as planned. All other units stand by for revised orders based on initial results. The next few hours unfolded like a deadly chess match played across multiple star systems. Task Force Delta's attack on the Hegemony Communication Hub at Proxima Station met fierce resistance from the upgraded defenses, but Marcus's analysis of their defensive patterns allowed Task Force Epsilon to approach their target from an unexpected vector. Epsilon reports successful neutralization of the staging area at Kepler 219, General Thysera announced. Minimal casualties, enemy forces scattered. And Delta? Heavy fighting, but they've breached Proxima Station's outer defenses. Enemy communications are disrupted but not eliminated. Marcus studied the tactical feeds, noting how the hegemony forces were reacting to their attacks. Your Majesty, look at these movement patterns. They're not just defending. They're repositioning for something. Queen Zarathel enhanced the long-range sensors, revealing what Marcus had suspected. They're accelerating their original timeline. Instead of waiting for their planned assault, they're launching a counterattack with whatever forces they have ready. How long until they reach our space? Admiral Vextar asked. At current speeds, 14 hours, Marcus calculated. But Your Majesty, look at their formation. They're not heading for the junction points we identified. They're coming straight for Zephyr Prime. The implications hit everyone at once. The hegemony had anticipated their surgical strikes and prepared a countermove that would eliminate the heart of the Empire. While their main fleet was scattered across multiple sectors, they're trying to cut off the head, Queen Zarathel said grimly. If they can take the capital and eliminate the royal family, the outer colonies will surrender without a fight. Recall all task forces immediately, Admiral Vextar suggested. No time, Marcus said, studying the tactical displays. Even at maximum acceleration, our scattered forces can't return to defend the capital before the hegemony fleet arrives. The bridge fell silent as the magnitude of their situation sank in. They had successfully disrupted the hegemony's original plan, but the enemy's countermove threatened to end the war in a single devastating blow. Your Majesty, Marcus said quietly, there is one option, the same strategy that won the Battle of Arcturus Prime. She looked at him sharply. You want to take the flagship directly against their main fleet? Not just the flagship. Every ship we have in the home system, plus whatever defensive platforms and orbital fortifications we can bring to bear. We make our stand here, in the space above our own capital. Against odds of at least 5-1, General Thysera pointed out. The same odds my father faced when he defended your evacuation at Kepler 442b, Marcus replied. Sometimes you don't fight because you can win. You fight because it's the right thing to do. Queen Zarathel was quiet for a long moment, her eyes fixed on the approaching enemy fleet. When she finally spoke, her voice carried the weight of absolute command. Admiral Vextar, signal all ships in the home system to form a defensive line at the outer edge of Zephyr Prime's gravity well. General Thysera, activate all orbital defense platforms and prepare the planetary shields. Commander Lysandra, begin evacuating non-essential personnel from the capital. And the other task forces? Admiral Vextar asked. They continue their missions. If we fall here, those communication hubs and staging areas they're destroying might be the only things that prevent the hegemony from conquering the entire outer rim. As the crew rushed to implement her orders, Queen Zarathel turned to Marcus. I want you to know that whatever happens in the next few hours, your father would be proud of the officer you've become. With respect, Your Majesty, this isn't over yet. The hegemony has made one critical mistake, which is... Marcus gestured toward the tactical display showing their defensive positions. They assume we're the same Zephyrian empire they fought 20 years ago. They don't realize how much stronger we've become, how much more unified. They're not just attacking our capital, they're attacking our home. The Queen followed his gaze to the planet below, where billions of citizens from dozens of different species lived and worked together in unprecedented harmony. You think that makes a difference? I know it does. Because this time, we're not just fighting for territory or resources or political advantage. We're fighting for everything we've built together, human and Zephyrian, Centaurian and Andromedan. All of us united in something bigger than any one species could achieve alone. Queen Zarathel smiled, and for a moment, Marcus could see past the weight of command to the young princess who had once dreamed of peace among the stars. Then let's show them what unity can accomplish, she said. All ships, this is Queen Zarathel. Today we stand not just as Zephyrians, but as citizens of an empire built on cooperation and mutual respect. The enemy comes to destroy what we have created together. Let us remind them why the hegemony has never succeeded in breaking the bonds that unite us. As the enemy fleet approached, Marcus took his position at the tactical station, ready to help defend everything his father had died to protect. The battle for Zephyr Prime was about to begin. The Battle of Zephyr Prime began at 0347 hours when the first hegemony dreadnoughts emerged from hyperspace like metal mountains against the star field. Marcus watched from the flagship's bridge as sensor readings flooded the tactical displays. 87 enemy vessels, including 12 dreadnoughts and 4 massive carrier platforms launching wave after wave of strike fighters. Against them stood 31 Zephyrian ships, orbital defense platforms, and the planetary shield generators that protected the capital. The odds were overwhelming, but Marcus had learned something important during his time serving Queen Zarathel. Sometimes the most impossible battles were won not by superior firepower, but by superior purpose. Enemy fleet is assuming attack formation, Admiral Vextar reported. They're splitting into 3 groups. Looks like they plan to overwhelm our flanks while their main force punches through our center. Queen Zarathel studied the enemy movements with the same intense focus Marcus remembered from their chess games. They're using the same tactics that worked against scattered colonial defense forces. But we're not scattered, and this isn't a colonial outpost. Your Majesty, Marcus said, highlighting patterns in the enemy formation. Their carrier groups are hanging back, using their fighters to probe our defensive lines. If we can force those carriers to move forward to support their attack, we can use the orbital platform's heavy weapons against them, she finished. Admiral, adjust our formation. Pull back the outer defense perimeter and let them think they're gaining ground. The next hour was a carefully orchestrated dance of death among the stars. Zephyrian ships gave ground slowly, drawing the hegemony fleet deeper into the gravity well where the orbital platforms could engage with maximum effectiveness. Marcus coordinated the defensive fire patterns, using lessons learned from his father's tactical reports to anticipate enemy movements. The strategy worked perfectly until the hegemony revealed their surprise. New contacts, the sensor operator called out. 26 additional ships dropping out of hyperspace behind our position. Marcus felt his heart sink as he realized the implications. The hegemony had held back a reserve force, timing their arrival to catch the defenders in a pincer movement, just as the main battle reached its critical phase. They've learned from the war too, Queen Zarathel said grimly. Admiral, how long can our rearguard hold against those numbers? Maybe an hour if we're lucky, Admiral Vextar replied. But that leaves our main defensive line exposed to the primary assault. Marcus stared at the tactical displays, his mind racing through possibilities. Every option led to the same conclusion. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and running out of time. But as he watched the enemy formations closing in, something his father had once told him echoed in his memory. Sometimes the only way to win is to change the rules of the game entirely. Your Majesty, he said suddenly, what if we don't try to hold both positions? She looked at him sharply. Explain. The enemy expects us to divide our forces to try to defend against both attacks simultaneously. But what if we abandon the outer defense perimeter entirely and concentrate everything on a single, overwhelming counterattack? Against which force? Admiral Vextar asked. Marcus highlighted the reserve fleet that had just arrived. The one they don't expect us to attack. Their main fleet is prepared for a defensive battle. Heavy shields, overlapping fire patterns, the works. But that reserve force just dropped out of hyperspace. Their shields are still cycling up, their formations are loose, and they're probably expecting to catch us from behind while we're distracted. Queen Zarathel studied the proposal, her 6 arms moving gracefully across the tactical controls. It's incredibly risky. If we fail to break their reserve force quickly, the main fleet will destroy the orbital platforms and begin bombarding the planet. But if we succeed, Marcus continued, we eliminate a third of their total force and position ourselves to attack their main fleet from behind, while the orbital platforms engage from the front. The Queen was quiet for a moment, considering. Around them, the bridge crew waited tensely as energy weapons lit up the space between the fleets. Finally, she activated the fleet-wide communication system. All ships, this is Crown Actual. We are implementing Emergency Protocol 7. Repeat, Emergency Protocol 7. All vessels prepare for immediate course change to Vector 27 Mark IV. Admiral Vextar's eyes widened. Emergency Protocol 7 was the most aggressive maneuver in the Zephyrian Tactical Manual, a full fleet charge designed to break enemy formations through concentrated firepower and sheer audacity. Your Majesty, General Tisserus said from her communication station, the orbital platform commanders are requesting clarification. Are they to continue engaging the main enemy fleet? Affirmative. Tell them to hold nothing back. We need to keep that main fleet occupied while we deal with their reserves. Marcus coordinated the fleet's movements as 31 Zephyrian ships wheeled about in perfect formation, abandoning their defensive positions to charge directly at the enemy reserve force. The maneuver was so unexpected that it took the hegemony commanders several precious minutes to realize what was happening. Those minutes made all the difference. The Zephyrian fleet struck the enemy reserves like a spear thrust, Queen Zarathel's flagship leading the charge with its weapons blazing. Marcus watched in awe as the Queen demonstrated why she was known throughout the galaxy as the Iron Queen. Her tactical commands were precise, ruthless, and devastatingly effective. Direct hit on enemy carrier Alpha 7, the weapons officer reported. She's breaking apart. Reserve Fleet command ship is listing to starboard, added the sensor operator, reading massive internal explosions. But the hegemony wasn't helpless. Their remaining ships rallied quickly, forming a defensive cluster and pouring concentrated fire into the advancing Zephyrian formation. The flagship's shields flared and sparked under the assault. Shield generators at 60%, Admiral Vextar called out. We can't maintain this level of engagement much longer. Marcus studied the tactical displays, looking for the key that would break the enemy formation. Then he saw it. The enemy's command ship was trying to withdraw behind the protective screen of its escorts, but its position left it vulnerable to attack from an unexpected angle. Your Majesty, if we can get the Aurora and the Defiant to attack from Vector 19 Mark 6 while we maintain pressure from the front, do it, she ordered without hesitation. The maneuver worked perfectly. Caught between multiple attack vectors, the enemy command ship's defenses crumbled. As it exploded in a brilliant flash of light, the remaining reserve ships lost coordination and began to scatter. Reserve fleet is broken, Admiral Vextar announced. Surviving ships are withdrawing, but their victory came at a cost. During their assault on the reserves, the main hegemony fleet had hammered the orbital defense platforms. Half of them were gone, and the planetary shields were failing under sustained bombardment. All ships new heading, Queen Zarathel commanded. We're going after their main fleet while they're still focused on the platforms. Marcus coordinated the approach, using the debris field from the destroyed platforms as cover. The Zephyrian fleet emerged from behind the wreckage like avenging angels, catching the enemy ships from their unprotected flank. What followed was not so much a battle as an execution. Caught between the surviving orbital platforms and the returning fleet, the hegemony forces found themselves trapped in a crossfire with no escape route. One by one, their massive dreadnoughts succumbed to the combined assault. When the last enemy ship finally fell silent, the bridge of the Vengeance erupted in cheers. Marcus slumped back in his chair, exhausted but elated. They had done the impossible, defeated a vastly superior force through courage, cunning, and unity. Queen Zarathel approached his station, her expression mixing pride with something deeper. Your father would have been proud of you today, Marcus. That was exactly the kind of tactical brilliance that made him legendary. We all did this together, Your Majesty. Every ship, every crew member, every person who believed in what we're building here. She nodded, then activated the communication system one final time. Citizens of the Zephyrian Empire, this is your queen. Today we face the greatest threat our civilization has ever known, and today we prove that unity is stronger than hatred, that cooperation conquers division. The hegemony came to destroy what we have built together. Instead, they have only made us stronger. As Marcus listened to her words echoing across the star system, he realized that his journey to Zephyr Prime had been about more than just serving as a guard. He had found his place in something larger than himself, something worth fighting for and worth protecting. The war with the hegemony was far from over, but after today, Marcus knew they would face whatever came next together. Human and Zephyrian, side by side, just as his father and Queen Zarathel had always dreamed. 6 months after the Battle of Zephyr Prime, Marcus stood in the same palace gardens where Queen Zarathel had once spoken to his father under alien moons. The war with the hegemony had ended 3 weeks ago with their complete surrender. their remaining forces scattered, and their leadership in exile. The victory had come at a cost, thousands of lives lost, entire star systems scarred by battle, but the Zephyrian Empire had emerged stronger and more unified than ever before. Today marked a different kind of ceremony. Representatives from across the galaxy had gathered to witness the signing of the Galactic Cooperation Accord, a treaty that would establish lasting peace between species and create a framework for shared exploration of the unknown regions beyond the galactic rim. "You look thoughtful," Queen Zarathel said as she approached, her ceremonial robes shimmering with bioluminescent patterns that reflected her peaceful mood. "I was thinking about my father," Marcus replied. "He would have loved to see this day. Representatives from dozens of species working together, planning joint exploration missions, sharing technology and knowledge freely." "He did see it in a way," she said softly. "Everything we've accomplished here began with the work he and others like him did during the original war. The connections they forged, the trust they built, it all led to this moment." Marcus nodded, understanding the truth in her words. His father's legacy wasn't just in the tactical reports and strategic innovations he had left behind, but in the very idea that different species could work together as equals, that diversity was a source of strength rather than division. "Your Majesty," he said, "there's something I've been meaning to ask you." "Ask away." "The night of the assassination attempt, when I was wounded, you called me Chiron." She was quiet for a moment, her purple eyes reflecting the gentle light of the garden's bioluminescent flowers. "Did I? I don't remember that clearly. I was emotional." "You did, and I've been wondering if maybe that's not entirely a bad thing." She looked at him with surprise. "What do you mean?" Marcus chose his words carefully. "I've spent the last 6 months trying to be my own person, to serve you as Marcus Chen rather than as Chiron's son. But maybe that's not the right approach. Maybe the best way to honor his memory is to continue the work he started. The work he started was building bridges between species, creating understanding where there had been mistrust." "Exactly. And that work isn't finished. The treaty we're signing today is just the beginning. There are still species in the outer rim who haven't joined the alliance, still worlds that need protection, still exploration to be done." Queen Zarathel studied his face intently. "What are you proposing, Marcus?" "I'm proposing that maybe it's time for the Empire to have a permanent human liaison again. Someone to help coordinate our expanding relationships with human colonies, to serve as a bridge between species, to continue the work my father began." She was quiet for so long that Marcus began to wonder if he had overstepped. Then slowly she smiled. "You realize that such a position would require you to spend considerable time away from Zephyr Prime, traveling to distant worlds, negotiating with species we've never encountered before?" "I understand the risks, Your Majesty. And you realize that it would also require you to work very closely with me, probably for years to come, as we build this new galactic community?" Marcus felt his heart skip slightly at the implication in her words. Over the past months, their relationship had evolved beyond the formal boundaries of Queen and Guard. She had become his closest friend, his most trusted advisor, and if he was honest with himself, something more than that. "I can think of worse fates, Your Majesty." She laughed at that, the sound like music in the quiet garden. "You know, Marcus, your father once told me that the best partnerships were built on shared dreams and mutual respect. He said that when two people wanted the same things for the right reasons, they could accomplish anything together." "Did he say that before or after he fell in love with you?" "Before," she admitted, "though I suspect he knew even then what was happening between us." Marcus took a step closer to her, close enough to see the complex patterns of light that played across her exotic features. "And what's happening between us, Your Majesty?" "I think," she said softly, "that the universe has given us a second chance to build something beautiful together. Not to recapture what was lost, but to create something new and wonderful. Together, human and Zephyrian, working as equals, building a future that honors the past while embracing possibilities we can't even imagine yet." As if summoned by their conversation, General Tissera appeared at the garden's entrance. "Your Majesty, forgive the interruption, but the diplomatic representatives are ready for the signing ceremony." Queen Zarathel straightened, transforming once again into the composed ruler her subjects knew. But before they left the garden, she turned back to Marcus. "Marcus Chen, by the authority vested in me as Queen of the Zephyrian Empire, I hereby appoint you as my special envoy for interspecies relations." Your first assignment will be to accompany me to the signing ceremony, and your second will be to help me plan our joint exploration mission to the Andromeda Galaxy. Your Majesty, Marcus said formally, I accept the appointment and pledge to serve the Empire with honor. Good. And Marcus? Yes, Your Majesty? When we're alone, you can call me Zara. As they walked back toward the palace, Marcus reflected on the strange journey that had brought him to this moment. He had come to Zephyr Prime as a simple guard, carrying nothing but his father's legacy and his own determination to serve. Now he was embarking on a new chapter, not just as a guardian of the present, but as an architect of the future. The signing ceremony was a magnificent affair, with beings from across the galaxy putting their names to a document that would reshape interstellar relations for generations to come. As Marcus watched Queen Zarathel add her signature to the accord, he saw not just a ruler claiming her place in history, but a partner with whom he would explore the infinite possibilities that lay ahead. Later that evening, as the celebrations continued in the palace halls, Marcus and Zara stood together on the royal balcony, looking up at the star-filled sky. Somewhere among those distant points of light lay worlds they had yet to discover, species they had yet to meet, adventures they had yet to share. Do you think he would approve? Marcus asked quietly, thinking of his father. I think, Zara replied, that Chiron always knew love had a way of transcending the boundaries others try to impose. He believed in building bridges, and that's exactly what we're doing. Between species, between worlds, and between hearts that found each other across the vastness of space. As the 3 moons of Zephyr Prime rose above the horizon, painting the sky in shades of silver and blue, Marcus Chen took the hand of Queen Zarathel and stepped forward into a future bright with infinite possibility. The universe was vast, full of wonders yet to be discovered and challenges yet to be overcome. But they would face it all together, human and Zephyrian, continuing the work his father had begun and building something beautiful from the ashes of war. Somewhere in the garden below, the bioluminescent flowers pulsed with gentle light, as if the palace itself was celebrating the love that had found a way to bloom again among the stars. The story of Marcus Chen and Queen Zarathel was just beginning, and the galaxy would never be the same.